Have you ever pondered the trials and tribulations of the peasants in colonial India? Picture this, a land of rich culture and tradition, where the majority of the population relied on agriculture for survival, suddenly being thrust into a foreign system of governance. These peasants, the backbone of the Indian economy, were subjected to exorbitant land revenues by the colonial rulers. With no means to pay, many were forced into labor, their hands toiling away on the very land they once owned. The British policies didn't stop at land revenue. They sought to transform the rural economy, pushing for commercial crops over subsistence farming. This shift, though profitable for the colonizers, left the peasants in a state of perpetual poverty and hunger. The impacts were far-reaching, stretching beyond mere economic struggles. The social fabric of rural India was being torn apart, the very essence of their lives altered drastically. These circumstances were the catalyst for numerous peasant movements across the country. The first notable peasant movement was the Indigo Revolt in Bengal, 1859. This was a significant uprising that marked the first organized resistance by the peasants against the British colonial rule. The revolt was a reaction to the exploitative indigo plantation system fostered by the British, which had left the peasants in a state of unimaginable despair and poverty. The indigo farmers were subjected to a system known as the Ryotwari system. Under this system, the British would force the peasants to cultivate indigo, a blue dye that was in high demand in Europe for textile production. The peasants were compelled to grow indigo instead of food crops, leading to widespread famine and poverty. But it wasn't just the forced cultivation of indigo that sparked the revolt. The British also employed a system of loans known as dadan to keep the farmers perpetually in debt. The farmers were given loans at the time of sowing, which they were expected to repay with interest once the crop was sold. However, the prices were manipulated so that the farmers could never repay their loans, thus trapping them in a vicious cycle of debt. The exploitation of the indigo farmers reached a boiling point in 1859. The peasants who had been struggling under the yoke of this oppressive system finally decided to stand up against their oppressors. They refused to grow indigo, and what started as a small act of defiance quickly grew into a full-fledged revolt. The Indigo Revolt served as a catalyst for change. It was the first time the peasants had united against the British, and their act of defiance sparked a series of peasant movements that would continue throughout the colonial period. The revolt also caught the attention of the Indian intelligentsia, leading to the formation of the first All India Peasant Organization in 1920. The Indigo Revolt was a beacon of hope, signaling the start of the fight for rights. It was the spark that ignited the flame of resistance and the beginning of a long and arduous struggle for land rights in colonial India. Further south in the Deccan region, another movement was brewing in the 1870s. This was a time when the winds of resistance began to pick up speed, fueled by the flames of discontent among the peasants. This was the era of the Deccan riots. The Deccan riots were not random bursts of violence, nor were they isolated incidents. These were the collective voices of the peasants, rising in unison against a system that had long exploited them. The causes were many, but at the heart of the issue was the unjust land revenue system imposed by the British administration. This system, which was heavily skewed in favor of the moneylenders, left the peasants in a cycle of never-ending debt and servitude. The peasants, however, refused to remain silent. The riots began as peaceful protests but soon escalated into full-blown confrontations. The peasants demanded their rights, their land, their freedom. They rallied against the moneylenders, against the landlords, against the oppressive British administration. The riots were a clarion call for justice, a beacon of resistance that illuminated the harsh realities of colonial rule. The impact of the Deccan riots was far-reaching. It forced the British administration to rethink their approach towards the peasants. It made them realize that they could no longer ignore the voices of the peasants, nor could they suppress their demands. The riots led to the introduction of the Deccan Agriculturists' Relief Act in 1879, which aimed to provide some relief to the indebted peasants. However, the act was not a panacea. It had its limitations and its flaws. But it was a start. It was a recognition of the peasants' rights, a step towards justice. It was a testament to the power of resistance, to the strength of the peasants who refused to bow down. who refused to give up. The Deccan riots were not just a chapter in the history of colonial India. They were a symbol of the peasants' struggle, a testament to their resilience, their courage, their determination. The Deccan riots were a testament to the peasants' resilience and their refusal to accept injustice. The early 20th century saw a surge in peasant movements, with a significant one being the Champaran Satyagraha of 1917. As the winds of change swept across colonial India, the peasants found their voice in the Champaran Satyagraha. This was not just a movement, it was an assertion of rights, a demand for justice, and a call for freedom. It was here, in the indigo plantations of Champaran, that the peasants rose against the oppressive European planters. Their plight was a heart-wrenching one. Forced to cultivate indigo under the exploitative Teen Katia system, they were left with barren lands and meager earnings. But the tide was about to turn. The arrival of a man named Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi transformed the peasants' struggle from a local agitation to a national issue. Gandhi's method of peaceful protest, or satyagraha, became the cornerstone of this movement. He encouraged the peasants to resist the injustice and stand up for their rights. This was not an easy task. The British authorities were quick to respond with force, but the satyagrahis held their ground, their resolve unbroken. The Champaran Satyagraha sent ripples throughout the country. It was a beacon of hope for the oppressed, a testament to the power of peaceful resistance. It changed the course of the Indian independence movement, bringing the plight of the peasantry to the forefront of national consciousness. Moreover, the Champaran Satyagraha led to the abolition of the Teen Katia system, providing a glimmer of relief to the peasants. The movement also inspired a wave of similar protests across India, further fueling the fight for freedom. In a society divided by caste, religion, and language, the Champaran Satyagraha united people under the banner of justice. It was a powerful testament to the strength of unity, the power of peaceful resistance, and the resilience of the Indian people. The Champaran Satyagraha marked a turning point, bringing peasant struggles to the forefront of the freedom movement. It was here that the seeds of independence were sown in the fertile fields of Champaran, watered by the sweat and tears of the Indian peasants. Post-independence, the peasant struggles didn't cease, but took on a new form. In the wake of gaining independence, India was abuzz with the promise of freedom and change. However, for the peasantry, the fight was far from over. The battle line shifted from colonial authorities to their own government, with land rights at the heart of the struggle. This era witnessed several significant peasant movements, illustrating the resilience and tenacity of India's rural populace. One such movement was the Telangana Rebellion, a fierce resistance against the feudal lords of the Telangana region. This revolt, fueled by the unjust distribution of land and rampant exploitation of peasants, lasted from 1946 to 1951. It was a milestone in the struggle for land rights, compelling the newly formed Indian government to embark on major land reforms. The Naxalbari uprising is another notable example of post-independence peasant movements. Starting in 1967 in the Naxalbari region of West Bengal, this revolt was ignited by the forceful eviction of a sharecropper by a landlord. The movement rapidly spread, underlining the deep-seated resentment and desperation among the peasantry. The Naxalbari uprising, though brutally suppressed, left an indelible mark on Indian society and politics. These movements played a crucial role in shaping modern Indian society. They highlighted the urgent need for land reform and social justice, forcing the government to address these issues. The Telangana Rebellion and the Naxalbari uprising were instrumental in the implementation of land ceiling laws and the abolition of the Zamindari system, thus paving the way for a more equitable distribution of land. However, even today, the fight for land rights continues in various forms across the country. Landless laborers, marginalized communities, and small farmers continue to grapple with issues of land ownership, forced evictions, and inadequate compensation, among others. These movements underscored the continued struggles of the peasantry even in independent India. Their fight, their resilience, and their spirit remain a testament to the ongoing struggle for land rights, equality, and social justice. From the Indigo Revolt to the Naxalbari uprising, the peasant movements in India have been a testament to the resilience of the rural population. This journey we've traversed together through the struggles and triumphs of India's rural populace, has painted a vivid picture of their ceaseless fight for land rights. The spark of rebellion ignited with the Indigo Revolt, a powerful signal of dissent against oppressive colonial systems. This flame of resistance spread and intensified, reaching its peak during the Naxalbari uprising, a significant milestone in the history of peasant movements in India. These movements were not just about the struggle for land, they were a fight for dignity, for justice, and for a better future. These historic crusades have shaped India's socio-political landscape, leaving an indelible impact on its current land rights situation. So, as we conclude our journey today, remember that the echoes of these struggles resonate even today as the fight for equitable land rights continues.